You ever meet someone who seems deeply drawn to you, but then suddenly pulls back the moment things start feeling real? You feel that spark, that chemistry, that energy. But then they disappear. Not because they don't care, but because they do. See, avoidants, the ones who struggle with emotional intimacy, have a unique way of testing the women they're genuinely interested in. They don't test with words. They test with distance, inconsistency, and confusion. And if you don't understand the game, you'll think you did something wrong when, in reality, and they're just afraid of what's happening inside them. So let's break down 6 subtle ways avoidants test women they truly want, and how you can pass those tests. Not by chasing, but by standing firm in your value. When an avoidant begins to feel something real, something deep that shakes the walls they've built for years, their instinct isn't to get closer, it's to step back. They create distance. They may suddenly become less responsive, less available, or act as though they're distracted with other parts of life. This isn't about you doing something wrong. It's their internal system trying to manage the fear of losing control. See, for an avoidant, emotional closeness often feels like danger because it threatens their independence. The more they start to care, the more they fear that caring will lead to pain, rejection, or suffocation. So, they test in the only way they know how, by pulling away to see how you respond. This distance isn't always physical, it can be emotional too. They might still text, still show up, but you can feel the shift. Conversations get shorter, affection cools, and the warmth that once filled your connection starts to fade. It's confusing, especially when you've done nothing to cause it. One day they're completely invested, the next they're behind an invisible wall. And if you're a person who craves closeness, that wall can feel unbearable. Your first instinct might be to chase, to try to fix whatever changed, to seek reassurance, to remind them how good things were. But this is the exact reaction they're unconsciously testing for. They want to see whether you'll lose yourself trying to win them back. Because in their mind, love and control have always been tangled. If you start chasing, over-explaining, or proving your worth, it feeds their hidden fear that being loved means being trapped. Your pursuit confirms what they've always believed, that closeness leads to pressure. And the more they feel pressure, the further they retreat. It becomes a loop. Your anxiety feeds their fear. Their distance feeds your anxiety, and both of you end up caught in a dance that feels like heartbreak but is really a misunderstanding of needs. The only way to break that loop is through calm detachment, not coldness, but grounded confidence. When they pull back, don't chase. Don't demand explanations or try to decode their every move. Instead, lean into your own world. Keep showing up for your life, your goals, your happiness. Let them feel the weight of your emotional independence. That quiet self-assurance tells them something powerful: you care, but you're not dependent. You can hold space for connection without clinging to it. What makes this so effective isn't manipulation, it's emotional maturity. You're showing them that love can exist without control. That affection doesn't have to mean losing yourself. Avoidants crave connection just like anyone else. They're simply terrified of losing their identity within it. When you stay secure and unshaken in the face of their distance, it challenges the story in their mind. It tells them that being close to you doesn't mean being consumed. It shows them that love can feel safe. Over time, that safety softens their defenses, and they may not say it out loud, but they'll start gravitating back toward you. They'll notice that you didn't punish their withdrawal, didn't chase them, didn't make their fear about your ego. You stayed grounded. That's magnetic to someone who's lived in emotional turbulence. It's not that they suddenly become open overnight, but your steadiness gives them something rare: trust. So when an avoidant creates distance, remember, it's not always rejection. It's often a test born from fear. The question isn't, why are they pulling away? But can I remain calm when they do? Because that calm isn't just for them, it's for you. It's how you protect your peace while giving them the space to realize that real intimacy doesn't threaten their freedom, it deepens it. And that's when they finally start to move closer, not because you chased them, but because you made it safe to stay. When an avoidant starts to grow emotionally attached, it feels both beautiful and terrifying for them. They crave that warmth, that closeness, that sense of being seen. But at the same time, it stirs up a storm of fear inside. To them, love feels like stepping into unfamiliar territory where losing control is inevitable. So, instead of leaning in, they often retreat behind emotional walls. They go cold, distant, detached. One day they're affectionate and attentive, and the next they're quiet and withdrawn. This change isn't random, it's a pattern of self-protection. Deep down, they're testing to see whether your warmth depends on their consistency, or whether you can hold steady even when they pull away. When an avoidant goes cold, it's not always about punishing you. It's a defense mechanism. They might suddenly become less expressive or seem uninterested in the relationship. What they're really asking, without words, is, can I still be loved when I'm not at my best? Or, will you still stay calm when I pull away to feel safe again? Because for them, love often feels conditional, something that could vanish the moment they stop performing for it. They've learned, often from past pain, that closeness comes with expectations, and expectations lead to disappointment. So when they go cold, they're watching your reaction closely, even if they pretend not to care. If you respond with panic, anger, or emotional withdrawal, it confirms their worst fears. That intimacy leads to chaos. But if you stay emotionally consistent, something powerful happens. You begin to rewrite their internal script. When you respond to their coldness with warmth, not in a clingy way, but in a calm, kind, self-assured way, you show them that love can exist without pressure. You show them that you're not going to mirror their withdrawal or punish them with silence. Instead, you demonstrate that emotional connection isn't a game of chase and retreat. It's a space where both people can breathe even through discomfort. This doesn't mean tolerating bad behavior or endless inconsistency. It means recognizing what's behind it, fear, not malice. You can remain warm while also keeping your boundaries intact. You don't have to beg for their attention or explain your worth. Your steadiness becomes your message. I'm here, but I won't lose myself trying to earn your love. That energy is what begins to disarm an avoidant's defenses. It tells them that closeness doesn't mean control, and distance doesn't mean disconnection. It's the emotional stability they've longed for but never believed was possible. Many people mistake this phase for rejection, but it's often a form of emotional testing. They're not trying to see if you'll fight for them. They're trying to see if you'll stay grounded when they can't be. They need to know that the relationship won't crumble when they get scared. This kind of testing can feel unfair, especially when you're offering genuine affection, but understanding it for what it is helps you navigate it with strength instead of confusion. The truth is, when you stay warm in the face of their coldness, you become a mirror of emotional safety. You're showing them that love doesn't have to be reactive. You're modeling what secure connection looks like. Over time, this steadiness starts to soften them. They may begin to open up again, slowly, cautiously, because now they associate you with calm rather than chaos. They see that your care isn't a trap, it's a choice. There's something incredibly powerful about a person who can love without losing themselves, who can stay kind without collapsing into neediness. That's the kind of energy that allows an avoidant to finally exhale, because what they're really searching for isn't someone who will chase after their coldness. It's someone who won't let their fear dictate the emotional climate of the relationship. When they sense that you can stay grounded even when they retreat, they begin to realize that maybe, just maybe, closeness doesn't have to mean danger. It can mean peace. And that peace is what draws them back toward you. Not because you fought for their attention, but because you gave them the safety to stop fighting themselves. When an avoidant pulls away into silence, it can feel like one of the most confusing and painful parts of being connected to them. Everything seems fine, the energy feels good, the conversations are flowing, and then suddenly nothing. No message, no call, no sign of where you stand. That silence hits differently because it's not just quiet. It feels like rejection, like abandonment, like being erased. But for the avoidant, this silence isn't about punishment. It's a form of emotional regulation. It's how they manage feelings that feel too intense, too close, too vulnerable. When emotions get overwhelming, silence becomes their safe space, a temporary escape to regain control. And as frustrating as that can be, this is one of the biggest tests they give the women they truly care about: how you respond to their silence. You see, when an avoidant goes quiet, they're subconsciously asking a question. Can I trust you to give me space without punishing me for it? They want to see if your need for connection will turn into pressure. If you panic, send multiple texts, or demand answers, it confirms their deepest fear, that closeness means being trapped or suffocated. For someone with an avoidant attachment style, the moment they sense emotional control from another person, they feel unsafe, so they pull away even further to protect their independence. It's not about you being too much. It's about them not knowing how to handle emotional intensity without feeling consumed by it. The silence, though, is also a test of emotional maturity, because it's in that quiet space that your behavior speaks louder than any words ever could. If you fill the silence with anxiety, pleading, or anger, you unknowingly reinforce their belief that relationships equal chaos. But if you respond with calm, if you allow the silence without taking it personally, you communicate something far more powerful than words: safety. Your stillness tells them that they don't need to perform or explain to keep your respect. You trust yourself enough not to chase clarity from someone who's not ready to give it yet. That kind of emotional composure doesn't come from indifference, it comes from strength. It's knowing your worth isn't dependent on someone else's ability to communicate right now. It's choosing peace over panic. And here's what often happens when an avoidant realizes that your world doesn't crumble in their absence, it creates a shift in them. Your calm becomes magnetic. They start to feel that being close to you doesn't mean losing control of their space. It actually feels safer because you're not trying to take something from them. You're allowing them to return at their own pace. It's also important to understand that during silence, avoidants are rarely emotionless. On the contrary, their mind is usually loud with conflicting thoughts. They think about you more than they'll admit. They might check your profile, reread old messages, replay moments in their head, but they'll resist the urge to reach out until they feel emotionally grounded again. Their silence isn't always about disinterest, it's about self-preservation. But that preservation only lasts as long as they believe reaching out will cost them their freedom. When they sense that you won't punish them for taking time, that you're capable of emotional balance, they start to view you differently. You go from being someone who triggers their fears to someone who soothes them. This doesn't mean tolerating endless disappearances or accepting inconsistency as love. It means recognizing the deeper pattern beneath the silence and responding from a place of confidence rather than desperation. The more you hold your center, the safer they feel to come closer. You become a calm harbor instead of another storm to navigate. And when they do return, and most avoidants do, it's often with more openness, more vulnerability, because your composure made it safe to do so. The silence that once felt like rejection becomes a bridge of understanding. You start to see that their withdrawal isn't about a lack of emotion, but a struggle to handle emotion. And in that realization, you find freedom too. You learn that love doesn't need to chase to prove itself. It just needs to stand still, grounded, patient, and unwavering. Because when an avoidant feels that kind of stillness from you, it doesn't push them away. It gently invites them back. When an avoidant starts to care about someone, it creates a tension inside them they can barely understand. They want connection, but they're terrified of being fully seen. So instead of diving straight into vulnerability, they start small. They drop tiny pieces of truth, subtle, almost hidden glimpses of their inner world, to see what you'll do with them. It could be a story about their childhood, a brief comment about a past relationship, or a casual mention of something that clearly still hurts. On the surface, it might not seem like much, but for an avoidant, this is monumental. It's their quiet way of saying, "I'm letting you in a little. Can you handle it?" That's how they test the emotional safety of the connection. Most people miss these moments because they're not dramatic or obvious. Avoidants rarely say, "I'm opening up to you now." Instead, it might come disguised as a joke, a fleeting confession, or a statement said so casually you almost overlook the pain behind it. They do this to gauge your reaction. They want to see if you'll judge them, dismiss them, or make it about yourself. They've likely experienced moments in the past where opening up led to criticism, rejection, or emotional chaos. So they test slowly, carefully, to see if you're different. If you respond with impatience, try to analyze them, or rush to fix their emotions, they'll retreat immediately. For them, vulnerability equals danger, and your reaction tells them whether that danger is real or imagined. But if you respond with presence, if you simply listen without trying to rescue or repair, you send a signal of safety. You're showing them that they can have feelings around you without having to defend them. That's powerful because avoidants often struggle to believe they can be loved without performing strength or control. Your calm curiosity becomes an invitation for them to trust you a little more each time. It's tempting to think that when someone starts to open up, you should match their vulnerability right away or push for more. But with avoidance, that usually backfires. They move at a slower pace emotionally because every inch of openness feels risky. They're not testing to see if you're interesting enough. They're testing to see if you're safe enough. So when they share something personal, your greatest gift is silence, patience, and empathy. You don't need to fill the space with advice or stories of your own pain. You just need to be fully present. That stillness tells them you can hold space for who they really are, and not just the version they show the world. When they see that you can handle the small things, the moments of honesty, the awkward silences, the raw emotions, they start to trust that maybe you could handle the bigger truths too. That's when the real connection begins. They begin to share more, stay longer in conversations that once made them uncomfortable, and slowly their guard starts to soften. But the process is fragile. One moment of judgment or emotional overreaction can send them back into their shell, reinforcing their old belief that vulnerability always leads to pain. This is why patience is everything. When an avoidant shares something personal, treat it like a delicate seed. Don't dig it up to see how fast it's growing. Just water it with understanding and time. Let them feel that their truth doesn't scare you. The moment they sense that you're emotionally steady enough to hold their imperfections, they start to rewrite the story they've been living with. That being seen means being hurt. And when that shift happens, it's subtle but profound. They begin to associate you with peace instead of pressure. Their emotional walls don't come crashing down all at once. They slowly lower, one brick at a time. Every honest moment they share with you becomes a thread of connection built on trust, not intensity. That's how avoidants truly bond, not through grand gestures or passionate declarations, but through the quiet realization that they can show up as themselves and not be met with judgment. When you meet their vulnerability with calm acceptance, you're not just passing a test, you're teaching them what safe love really feels like. Avoidants live in a constant tug of war between wanting closeness and fearing it. They crave connection just like anyone else, but the moment things start to feel too real, their fear of losing control takes over. That's why they often test women by creating uncertainty. They might give mixed signals, flirting deeply one day and acting distant the next. They might make vague plans that never quite solidify or talk about the future in abstract terms without commitment. It's not because they enjoy confusion or playing games, it's because ambiguity gives them space. It allows them to feel emotionally connected while still maintaining control over how close things get. The uncertainty they create becomes a test, one that reveals how secure you are when faced with emotional unpredictability. When you care about someone who acts like this, it can feel like emotional whiplash. One minute you're sure of where you stand, and the next you're questioning everything. The temptation to demand answers, to force clarity, can feel overwhelming. You might think that if you can just get them to define the relationship or explain their behavior, you'll feel safe again. But this is exactly the point of their test. They want to see how you handle not knowing. They want to know whether your self-worth depends on constant reassurance, or whether you can stay centered even when things are unclear. For an avoidant, uncertainty is a form of emotional armor. It protects them from feeling trapped. If they sense that you can handle not having all the answers, that you don't need to control or chase, it begins to ease their fear. But if you spiral into anxiety, push for commitment too soon, or interpret their hesitation as rejection, it confirms what they've always believed. That closeness leads to pressure. The more pressure they feel, the more they pull away. It's not that they don't like you, it's that they associate love with the loss of freedom. The way to pass this test is not by playing games back or pretending not to care. It's by embodying calm confidence. You can be interested without being anxious. You can want clarity without demanding it. When they pull back, you stay grounded. When they're vague, you respond with honesty instead of fear. That balance, showing that you value connection but don't depend on it for emotional stability, creates the safety they need to come closer. Avoidants are drawn to people who can tolerate the unknown, because uncertainty is their comfort zone. When you show that it doesn't destabilize you, they begin to feel something new. Peace. Uncertainty is their way of asking, can you love me even when I'm scared? And when you meet that fear with patience instead of panic, you become the one place in their world that feels different. You're not chasing them into clarity. You're simply being clear in yourself. You know what you want, but you're not forcing them to give it to you before they're ready. That steadiness is rare. It tells them you're emotionally strong enough to hold your own, even in confusion. Eventually, that strength disarms them. The mixed signals fade. The vague promises start turning into real plans. Because when they see that your love doesn't trap them, they stop running from it. They start to realize that commitment doesn't have to mean losing freedom. It can mean gaining security. The irony is that the less you pressure them, the more they want to give you certainty. Your composure becomes the mirror in which they see what love could look like when it's not driven by fear. When you handle uncertainty with grace, you give an avoidant something they've rarely experienced: the freedom to choose love instead of being forced into it. You teach them that intimacy doesn't have to feel like a cage. It can feel like breathing. And when they finally exhale in that realization, that's when the testing ends. Because in a world full of people who chase, the one who stays calm stands out as the safest place to land. When an avoidant starts to care deeply, one of the final ways they test the woman they want is by setting boundaries, sometimes subtly, sometimes firmly, to see how she'll respond. They might say they need space, that they're too busy, or that they're not ready for anything serious right now. It can feel like rejection, but it's not always meant that way. For an avoidant, boundaries are not walls to shut you out. They're shields that help them feel safe. When emotions become intense or connection feels overwhelming, they need to retreat to regain their sense of control. In that moment, they're watching carefully to see what you'll do with their boundary. Will you respect it, even when it's uncomfortable? Or will you take it personally and push against it? That reaction tells them everything about whether love with you will feel like freedom or pressure. Avoidants associate love with the risk of losing autonomy. They've often learned early in life that emotional closeness can lead to pain, dependency, or disappointment. So when they set a boundary, it's not about you, it's about survival. It's their way of testing. Can I be myself around you without being consumed? And when you respond to that by respecting their need for space instead of fighting it, you pass one of their most difficult tests. Because you're showing that you can love them without needing to control them. The mistake many people make in this situation is assuming that giving space means pulling away emotionally. But that's not what an avoidant needs. They don't want you to vanish or mirror their distance. They want you to acknowledge their boundary while still maintaining your emotional steadiness. You can say something as simple as, "I understand. Take the time you need. I'm here when you're ready." That one sentence carries incredible power because it communicates emotional security. You're not trying to force closeness or prove your worth. You're letting them know that their independence doesn't threaten your connection. That balance of compassion and confidence is what makes them start to trust. When you respect their boundary, you're teaching them something they've rarely experienced. That love doesn't have to come with conditions. You're showing them that intimacy can coexist with individuality. This is how you become different from the people who made them fearful in the first place. Most avoidants have experienced relationships where emotional needs were either smothering or inconsistent. So they protect themselves by setting limits. But when someone meets those limits with grace, it challenges everything they thought they knew about love. They start to see that being close to you doesn't mean losing themselves. It means being accepted fully, with all their flaws and fears. It's important to understand that respecting their boundaries doesn't mean tolerating emotional neglect. It's about balance. You can hold space for them without putting your own needs on hold. You can honor their independence while still honoring your own. The power lies in your ability to stay centered, to give them the breathing room they need without stepping out of your own worth. That kind of strength is magnetic because it communicates one simple truth: I love you, but I'm not afraid to lose you. Avoidants are drawn to that kind of emotional energy because it feels safe. It tells them they can explore love at their own pace, without the fear of being pulled in deeper than they're ready for. As time passes, they begin to notice how different your response feels. You didn't try to chase them into connection, you didn't guilt them into staying close, and you didn't interpret their need for space as rejection. That level of maturity and understanding builds trust in ways words never could. Suddenly, the very boundary they created to protect themselves becomes the bridge that brings them closer to you. Because they realize that you're not trying to break down their walls. You're simply waiting patiently on the other side. And for someone who's spent their life believing that love means losing freedom, discovering someone who respects their limits feels like finally being free within love itself. Every connection with an avoidant is like walking a delicate line between closeness and distance, between desire and fear. It's not that they don't want love, they just fear what love might cost them. But when you understand the subtle ways they test you, it changes everything. You stop taking their distance personally. You stop chasing the silence, the confusion, the mixed signals. You begin to see their behavior not as rejection, but as protection. And that awareness gives you power, not power over them, but power over yourself. Because the truth is, you can't force an avoidant to feel safe. You can only be safe. You can only embody the calm, grounded energy that teaches them love doesn't have to be chaos. You can't heal their past, but you can show them that connection can exist without control, that closeness can coexist with freedom, and that vulnerability doesn't have to mean losing yourself. When you approach them from a place of peace rather than panic, you become the rare kind of person they can actually trust. Love with an avoidant isn't about chasing, it's about holding space. It's about showing consistency where others showed volatility. It's about proving not through words, but through your steadiness, that emotional safety is possible. And when they finally realize that love with you feels safe, they begin to lower the walls they've built around their heart. Not because you tore them down, but because they chose to. So, if you've ever loved someone who pushes you away just when things start to feel real, remember this: they're not testing your worth. They're testing whether your energy can hold steady when their fear takes over. Pass those tests not by trying harder, but by standing stronger. Let your peace speak louder than your pain. Let your patience become your power. Because in the end, what makes an avoidant fall in love isn't being pursued, it's being understood. And what keeps them close isn't pressure, it's peace. Thank you for listening. I hope this message reminds you that love isn't about losing yourself to be chosen. It's about knowing your worth so deeply that you become the kind of person who doesn't need to chase, because your energy naturally attracts what's meant for you. Stay strong, stay grounded, and remember, real love never asks you to shrink. It only asks you to stand in your truth. Thank you all, and take care.